So with our handsome Mr. Z, Zeke has been doing some really nice playtime. So he and the gentleman just came out for a little bit of wrestle and some potty breaks. I did have our little lady Miss Phoenix come out as well, so she can chew them, so she can have a little solo potty break because it is a little bit too rowdy for these teenage men and that more mature adult lady. So when they're out and about, come throughout certain points of the day, she's again with her own little zone and she can see the guys as she would like. But if she would prefer, she can actually go around the corner and go into like my desk area and not really have to be available for viewing. So obviously when working with our youngsters, so our teenage dogs, there's going to be times like I know you had mentioned, Zeke's dad has mentioned that at times when he goes to visit his friends, and they also have another very nice friendly lab. So the problem with the gentleman is at that household is they tend to have a hard time coming back from that excitement of seeing each other and then not viewing it as the whole time as WrestleMania. So I understand that. And two, obviously, as I'm blabbing, Mr. Z is working a very nice job with his place position on his dog cot. So we might throw in a little bit with that stay as I'm spewing about sort of his engagement with his new best friend, Charlie. So he and Charlie both get very excited to have some playtime, which is perfectly okay. It's wonderful to have good, close doggy friends that your dog can have a good rapport with. The problem is, though, is every time if they see their friend, it always only equals wrestles, is that can create the association that every time we come across that friend or maybe even other novel friends, that it might always turn into play. So I know he's been coming to classes here with me, but then also classes with you at times. And there's going to be moments where, you know, Mr. Z gets to see a classmate, but doesn't get to get the involvement with that other dog. And that's going to be really crucial. So I know I had mentioned earlier with Miss P how socialization is a window when your babe is younger. And once that closes at around 12 to 16 weeks, then what you're working on is you're still continuing to build good life experiences and setups, but you're also then dealing with sometimes genetics, experiences they had prior to even coming to you. And then you're also dealing with sort of what they've learned thus far and what works for them to feel comfortable or gain responses. So if, for example, Mr. Z, the moment he sees Mr. C, they go right into WrestleMania, it could be very hard to, when they start to get excited, bring them back from that. So I would recommend, I know Charlie took classes way back in the day, and he's probably been doing a really great job with a whole bunch of other skills. And I know life is crazy, so don't worry. But I would recommend, Mr. Handsome says he forgot to chew that last one too. It's like the common theme in classes, don't bother chewing your snacks. So when it comes to Mr. Z and Mr. C getting together, I would allow for play, but I would see if throughout the play, if you can get them to do some check-ins. So you might actually have to use gear, so your leashes and your harnesses or whatever you have, and make sure the boys, while they see each other, they could maybe do some find-its, or they could rock a little check-in, or maybe they do some loose leash walking near each other with little bounce backs between a quick little high and a bounce back, almost like we used to do in puppy class. So you may also want to start to implement maybe going and settling on a cot and then include other distractions first at home and then transition this behavior to maybe your friend's house. But if, let's say, our dogs have never really worked a certain skill, or the skill has only been performed in a very calm or quiet environment, this is where we've dived into, obviously, generalization of skills does require good experience and practice trying it in different venues. But if your babe has only really rocked it here with this criteria, when you go and change it and you go somewhere novel, that might be, again, enough of a change where your puppy doesn't view it as the same setup. So if you're finding that he's really struggling with coming back from play, I know like in the structured play classes, it is mostly a social class, but they do start to learn cues from their friends saying like, I need a pause, or I want to take a break, or let's lay down and relax for a moment. So they do take little rest periods, but it could be one of those situations where sometimes you're throwing in multiple factors. So like the new environment, the new friends and family that might be very exciting or a little novel. And then you're throwing in a friend that he hasn't gotten to see in a little while. All of those things, just like with us, could be a little bit of trigger stacking. So the trigger stacking might make his abilities or his responses not the same or harder to come by, because trigger stacking does not always have to be negative things. It doesn't always have to be one bad thing after another that then sort of leads to the last straw that broke the camel's back situation. But it could be where we're getting overstimulated. The arousal is getting really high, which means that a lot of times the brain function falls away. So if you're finding that he is more mouthy, really wiggly and disjointed, he's more than likely getting overstimulated and then therefore having a hard time coming back from it. So I would, on purpose at home, practice revving the engine, like get him to play a little bit, get him to do some tugging, get him to play with some sort of toy that you guys can play together, and then go from the woohoo to then simmer. So maybe a sit, maybe an eye contact, maybe a find it, or go to your settle and see if you can get a little settling on a mat or a dog bed or some sort of target, and then see if you can, once he's done doing some simmering, then could he offer, let's say, another play response. So that way, on purpose, you're almost practicing revving the engine, putting the brakes on, but not necessarily going until you're out of fuel. You can then put it into park, or you could slow down, or you could speed up, and you could change up the dynamic. Yes. So let's say I want to end this really nice stay for him so we can do another rep. Ready? All done. And we might get Mr. Handsome. He's like, oh my gosh, do I have to? What a nice job. So I'm not going to feed him for getting up, but maybe I might feed him for a gorgeous little look for a moment. Yes, feed him for that. Very pretty. So I might get Mr. Z ready. Zeke. Get him up and wiggling to do a little find it. He's like, where'd it go? This way. Ready? Find it. He's so tired. He's like, guys, my stamina is only so much. So maybe Mr. Z would rather work a place, but I wanted to get him up so he could at least stretch his legs again like we did a little earlier for Mr. B. If they're stuck laying down the whole time and you're wondering why do they hate doing stays, it might be that sometimes we're asking for stays when it's too challenging, or maybe they need to get up and move a little bit before doing it again. But right here, I'm going to feed Mr. Z, yes, for even going and targeting his cot, because that's a really smart move on his end. Nice. So right there, yes. So if he goes and targets the bed, we could definitely take that moment to again capture a response and start to create value in that behavior. So we might rock that lovely down. Gorgeous. I'm going to again tell him to stay. And our AC just shut off for a moment, so it shouldn't be quite as noisy. But I don't think it gets picked up as well on the microphone, so that's good. So again, we're just helping generalize the skill, just like we did a little bit earlier for Mr. B, getting Mr. Z to get comfortable. And again, I think you've probably noticed that I abbreviate all the beauties' names. I know there might be some new watchers to the videos or new folks taking a peek-see. So if you're ever wondering why I don't say the dog's name, I tend to only say their name when I want their attention for a check-in. Oh my gosh, chew them. Poor guys. So because if I was constantly saying Mr. Z's name and then he kept looking at me and I never connected with him, eventually his name recognition is going to fall away, because sometimes I'm asking him for a check-in. Sometimes I might say his name and then want nothing out of him. Sometimes I might even, for example, sometimes folks will use their names in a negative moment. So like, hey, you, knock it off, or hey, that, not nah. So the problem with using their name and then pairing it with the correction is that a lot of times you're now creating negative associations with their name, which could also really potentially ruin your recall or connection with you for focus. So I would highly recommend don't say their name unless you need their attention. Make sure that if you are going to say their name, have you practiced name recognition to the point where your dog hears it and checks in? And if they're not as fluid with name recognition, we should go back to the basics and build back up. So I know in the beginning during class, when you guys would come to one of the group classes with other students and other pups, is sometimes he would have a hard time honing in on you versus the environment. So, but then you were like, oh, he never responds to like his name and he gets so distracted. So this is very typical for the age group, but how we work it will either make it better or worse. So what I mean by that is if, let's say, I was constantly saying his name as he was like, let's say, lunging to his lady friend next door because he loved Miss R, then the problem there is I'm constantly saying a cue or a name moment and he's non-responsive. So as he's hearing me say it over and over, there's no association, or it's maybe more noise that I just should ignore, because all these people ever do is blab, if you couldn't tell. So these would be moments for Mr. Z to learn, hey, when they're talking, it doesn't really mean much, so just ignore it. So we want to make sure that our slogans don't become lost in, again, repetition or nagging, and that they don't become a negative. So right now he's just working a really nice job with his place position, working the stay. I'm just feeding him throughout his stay to build that value in being stuck. So he's doing real nice. So, but let's say we were having a really hard time with his name recognition. I may go and like rev the word. So what I mean by that is like create a lot of value in that thing. So if, let's say, for example, he wasn't as attentive to his name, I'm going to go Zeke, and then yes to feed him. Zeke, yes. Zeke, yes. Zeke, yes. And then if, let's say, for example, I give him a little moment to look at something else, and maybe he's a little distracted, then I might try again to say his name and see if he looks to me. So like right now, though, he's staring into my soul because he thought that was a really cool game. Smart boy. You can also, if, let's say, you're building in that eyes have a lot of great value, remember there's also the two-hand cookie game. There are the pattern games, which I highly recommend. Zeke? Yes, there we go, beautiful. So there could be moments where you're capturing when he gives you eyes on his own and building great value there, or see if you can get him to get distracted. Zeke? Yes. And every time he hears his name in response, we're gonna feed. If, let's say, he did not respond at all and maybe the environment is way too stimulating or too hard, I would go back to a softer venue, lower the criteria, and see if I can make him be successful again. So right here, I might load it once more. Zeke? Yes. Zeke? Yes. Zeke? Yes. Zeke? Yes. And then what we might do is I'm going to see if I can get him up and off of the bed and see if we can try some of this name recognition in general and see if he bounces back. So we might go all done, and we'll see if we can get Mr. Handsome to get up. He's like, that is terrible. Getting up is hard. Oh my gosh, the snack just fell out. So I'm going to do a little find it just to get him up and wiggling. I'm going to just pick up the bed just so he doesn't go right now into lying down quite yet. So that way he can use it in a few moments, but we're going to take a little break from being stationary. So if, let's say, for example, he is not as attentive, I'm going to now do the same thing I did while I was on the bed when he was on the bed, is do this. Zeke, yes. Zeke, yes. Zeke, yes. So if, again, he's non-responsive to his name, I might go and get his attention, and I'd go Zeke, and then yes to feed. So almost like luring him for eyeballs this way. He's like, lady, I'm exhausted. So let's say, again, I'm going to get him up and wiggling. He says, that seems terrible. And then once he finds his snack, I'm going to go, Zeke. Yes. And feed him for heading in my direction. Ready? Find it. So again, this is, again, I know he's been doing really, really well typically with the recall. Zeke. Yes. Nice job. So we'll do another little find it. So, but these behaviors, they all start to build on one another. And they kind of become bigger and bigger in the right direction. Zeke. Oh, there's the one he lost earlier. Yes. Nice job. So give Mr. Z a little breather from some of the name recognition. But I would highly recommend, if, let's say, this was really challenging for him, capture moments where he's checking in. Also then feed for behavior, even if it's a glimmer. So if, let's say, he glanced in my direction but didn't give me direct eye contact, I'm still going to mark it and feed it. You could also rock a bit with the two-hand cookie game again. So this one, he can get comfortable. So he's like, guys, this is exhausting. So what we would do with the two-hand cookie game is just a retouch base. We've done this one a little bit in class here and there. So you have snacks in each side of your hands. So you have multiple rounds to feed your babe for giving you eyeballs. So you're not going to tell your dog the name. You're not going to give him the answer. You're not going to tell him to check in with a certain slogan for eyeballs. So I'm going to show Mr. Z what I have in my hands by letting him sniff it. I'm going to hold it off to the sides. And what I'm waiting for Mr. Z to do is the moment he locks eyes with me, yes, versus my hands, I'm going to feed him for that. Yes. And you can feed from the left to the right. You can rotate. Yes. But the moment Mr. Z goes from looking at the hands or the environment and checks in with me, that's what I'm feeding him for. Yes. Smart boy. So this one starts to create a puppy that no matter what you're up to, they're going to start to look to you, yes, versus everything else. Because if connection with the handler, oh, we're so tired. He's given up on life. That's very nice. You're doing a very, would you like a little rubby rub on your belly? You poor baby. You poor baby. What a rough day. Oh, you gotten to be such a big boy. So if your babe needs a breather, so sorry about the lovely angle for probably both ends. So when he needs a little breather, take a pause. So I'm not going to keep working with eye contact until he wants to literally give up on life. But I would recommend keep your training sessions short and sweet. See, how are we progressing? Are we getting more retention? Like, is he holding on to information? It will take, again, if you worked him a few minutes here and there every day, you're going to probably see more progression than most people see when they work their dog for long chunks of time. Because for a lot of the babes, their attention span isn't there. And then our attention spans may not be there. So I highly recommend short little intervals of practice throughout the day and throughout the week to be very, very beneficial. But just like with all of these teens, is make sure that we're getting enough rest for them. So remember, he's still going to need between 16 to 18 hours, bare minimum. If he's not getting enough rest, then this is where abilities go out the window. His ability to function and be less stimulating or less mouthy might be harder for him. So, and a lot of dogs that don't get enough adequate rest end up having a harder time with anxiety. So separation anxiety, anxiety that could lead to reactivity. So a lot of these things kind of flow in and out because everything's kind of like a spider web. So things are definitely connected when they may be seeming very out of context. So I would highly recommend for this handsome guy, keep rocking it, keep doing what you're doing. He seems to be doing a really nice job. Nice job checking in, sir. But just always remember, if something is not going the way you were hoping, think what can we tweak to make it easier for him and more of a moment for good learning versus just being in the situation and then failing, even if it's failing from our perspective, not his. So, but Mr. Z, ready? You want to do a little find it? We'll take a little breather for a little, we'll go out for a little potty break in a sec. But what a nice job Mr. Z did.